Hi everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick review video before you start your review and your quiz, just to go over some of this factoring, because this is kind of a hard concept and I just want to make sure you're doing okay before you take this next quiz. Okay, there's really three major types. Okay, the factoring when you have a leading coefficient of 1, like the one in this problem, there's no number in front of this squared term. Okay, the one where you have a leading coefficient of something other than 1, and those ones that have more than 3 terms. Okay, so those are the major three types. Okay, the first ones we're going to look at is with that leading coefficient of 1. And no matter if it's 1 with a leading coefficient or without a leading coefficient, you got to make sure you look at your times. Okay, now this one's pretty simple because we have a positive and a positive, which anytime everything in your problem is positive, all your terms are going to be positives. Okay, so when I look at this, since this doesn't have a leading coefficient other than 1, I'm going to use the x method. Okay, and when I use that x method, whatever I have here is going to be multiplied. Whatever number I put down here is our adding term. Okay, this up here is always for our third term, and this one down here is for our second term. Okay, so our third term for this problem is 12, and our second term for this problem, the number is 8. So what I'm looking for is two numbers that multiply together to get 12, but add to get 8. Okay, so when I think through the multiples of 12, I have 1 and 12, but they total 13. I have 3 and 4, but they total 7. And I have 6 and 2, which total 8. So I know it's going to be 6 and 2. Giving me the factors of p plus 6 times p plus 2. And I can check my work by doing that FOIL method. So p times p is p squared. Outsides gives me 2p. Insides give me 6p. In my last term, 6 times 2 is 12. And if I check this middle part, combining these like terms, 2p plus 6p is 8p, which is what I wanted, so it checks. So here is my factors. Okay, they get a little bit more tricky when your third term is negative. Okay, so here I have g squared minus 5g minus 14. Okay, since this third term is negative, that tells me I'm going to have one term that's positive and one term that's negative. And to figure out if it's going to be your bigger term or your smaller term that's negative, we look at our middle term. Okay, now in this problem, that middle term is negative, which means my bigger factor of 14 is going to be the one that's negative. So I'm going to again make that x. Okay, we have to multiply to get negative 14, but add to get negative 5. Okay, again, if I go through my factors, we have 1 and 14, okay, which would, if I subtract them, because I'm looking for that they're going to be opposite signs, 14 and 1 is only 13, so that's not going to work. I have 2 and 7, and if I subtract 7 minus 2, I get a 5. Okay, so I know I'm going to need a 7 and a 2. Now, like I said, that 5 has to be positive, so the bigger number, that 5 has to be negative, so the bigger number has to be negative. And so if I check that, I get g minus 7 times g plus 2. Okay? And if I check that again using that FOIL, I get g squared plus 2g minus 7g minus 14. And checking those middle two, 2 minus 7 is negative 5, so it checks. So here are my factors. And it doesn't matter which order you write them in. I can have g minus 7 times the quantity of g plus 2 like I have it, or you could have had the quantity of g plus 2 times the quantity of g minus 7. That order doesn't matter. Okay? So whenever that third term is negative, you should know you're going to have one of each, a positive and a negative. Okay, one other one like that, again, we don't have a leading coefficient other than 1, but in this one, the third term is again positive, but our middle term is negative. Okay, So this time, anytime that third term is positive, we again know our signs have to be the same. But in this case, they both have to be negative. And the reason I know that is that a negative times a negative is a positive, but a negative plus a negative is still a negative. So I'm multiplying to get 45, and I'm adding to get a negative 18. Okay, and when I do that, those factors, okay, the one that first comes to mind is obviously 5 times 9, okay? But if I add 5 and 9, I only get 14, so that one doesn't work. Okay, so I have to think about different factors of 45, which one, a different one is 15 and 3. And if I add 15 and 3, I get that 18. Okay, so my factors for this one are going to be d minus 15 times the quantity of d minus 3. Okay, and when I check that answer with FOIL, I have d squared minus 3d insides minus 15d plus 45. Okay, when I combine these middle two terms, negative 3d minus 15d, I get that negative 18, which is what we wanted, so I have it correct. Okay, so those are the ones with that leading coefficient of 1. Okay, so let's look at some where we have a leading coefficient other than 1. And these get to be the trickier ones because they take more guessing and checking.